The sound of Sarah's scream cut through the Arizona desert like a knife through silk, echoing off the red rock formations that surrounded the stagecoach as masked riders circled like vultures around dying prey. Hannah Morrison had been traveling from Tucson to her sister's ranch near Superior, Arizona, when the Dalton Gang descended upon their stagecoach that scorching August afternoon in 1882. The driver lay dead in the dust, the guard wounded and moaning, and the other two passengers, a married couple from Boston, huddled together in terror as 6 outlaws on horseback surrounded them with drawn weapons. Hannah stood frozen beside the overturned luggage, her green calico dress dusty from the attack, dark auburn hair escaping its pins, and her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Well, what do we have here? The leader, a scarred man named Jack Dalton, dismounted and walked toward her with predatory intent. His breath reeked of whiskey and tobacco as he circled her like she was livestock at auction. "Pretty little thing, aren't you? Nice change from the gold and cash we usually find." Hannah tried to step back, but another gang member blocked her path. She was 23 years old, had survived the death of her parents to influenza 3 years prior, and had learned to be strong, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. Her hands trembled as she clutched her small traveling bag to her chest like a shield. "Please, just take what you want and leave us be," she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. Jack Dalton laughed, a cruel sound that sent chills down her spine despite the 100-degree heat. "Oh, we intend to take what we want, sweetheart, and what we want is you." He turned to his men, who leered and nodded their agreement. "She belongs to us now, boys. We'll take her back to camp and decide what to do with her there." The words hit Hannah like a physical blow. She thought of running, but where would she go in this vast desert landscape? The nearest town was miles away, and she would not survive a day alone in this unforgiving terrain. Her eyes darted to the wounded guard, who could barely lift his head, and to the terrified couple who looked away, unable or unwilling to help. No. The single word rang out clear and strong across the desert, spoken in a deep voice that carried absolute authority. Everyone turned to see a lone rider approaching from the east, his horse moving at a steady trot. He sat tall in the saddle, wearing a dusty brown hat, faded blue shirt, and weathered chaps. As he drew closer, Hannah could make out more details. Broad shoulders, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He looked to be in his mid-20s, and there was something about the way he carried himself that spoke of capability and quiet confidence. Jack Dalton's face twisted with anger. "This isn't your business, cowboy. Ride on if you know what is good for you." The rider, whose name Hannah would soon learn was Henry Patterson, brought his horse to a stop about 20 feet away. His hand rested casually on his thigh, close to the revolver at his hip, but he made no threatening moves. "I am making it my business," he said calmly. "Let these people go. Take what money you found and ride out." "Or what?" one of the gang members, a thin man with a ratty beard, challenged. "There are 6 of us and one of you." Henry's expression did not change. "I have counted. The odds could be worse." Hannah found herself mesmerized by this stranger who had appeared like something out of a dime novel. His voice was steady, almost conversational, but there was steel underneath it. She noticed his horse was well cared for, his gear clean and maintained, and his gun belt worn with the familiarity of someone who knew how to use it. Jack Dalton's eyes narrowed. "You must be either very brave or very stupid. We just claimed this woman. She belongs to us now. We are taking her." Henry's jaw tightened, and for the first time, anger flashed in his eyes. "No woman belongs to any man," he said, his voice dropping lower, more dangerous. Not to you, not to anyone. She is a free person with the right to choose her own path. Now I am going to say this one more time. Let these people go. The tension in the air became thick enough to cut. Hannah held her breath, certain that violence was about to erupt. She wanted to call out to this brave stranger, to tell him to save himself, that she was not worth dying for, but her voice seemed trapped in her throat. Jack Dalton's hand moved toward his gun. You have signed your own death warrant, Cowboy. What happened next occurred so fast that Hannah barely registered it. Henry's hand blurred to his revolver, drawing and firing in one smooth motion. The shot hit Jack Dalton's gun hand, sending his weapon flying and the outlaw howling in pain. Before the other gang members could react, Henry had already shifted his aim, his horse sidestepping to give him a better angle. Next man who draws gets it in the chest instead of the hand, Henry said, his voice still calm despite having just fired. I can hit all 6 of you before you clear leather. I have seen men try. It never ends well for them. The outlaws froze, suddenly uncertain. Their leader clutched his bleeding hand, cursing viciously. Henry had demonstrated his skill, and they could see in his eyes that he meant every word. These men were bullies and thieves, accustomed to easy prey and soft targets. Facing someone who could actually fight back was another matter entirely. You will regret this, Jack Dalton snarled through his pain. The Dalton Gang does not forget. Then you will have time to remember while you are riding away, Henry replied. He gestured with his gun. Mount up, all of you. Leave the woman, leave these people, and ride north. If I see any of you within 10 miles of Superior, I will shoot first and skip the conversation. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one of the gang members, an older man with gray in his beard, slowly backed toward his horse. Come on, Jack. This isn't worth dying over. There will be other stagecoaches, other opportunities. Jack Dalton looked like he wanted to argue, but his bleeding hand and the steady aim of Henry's revolver convinced him otherwise. With furious glances and muttered threats, the gang members mounted their horses. Jack fixed Henry with a venomous glare before turning to Hannah. You will wish you had come with us, girl. You have no idea what you are turning down. I think she has a pretty clear idea, Henry said dryly. Now ride before I change my mind about letting you go. The Dalton Gang wheeled their horses around and galloped north, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Henry kept his gun drawn until they disappeared from sight, then finally holstered it and dismounted. He walked first to the wounded guard, kneeling beside him to examine the injury. Bullet went through the shoulder, missed anything vital, he assessed. You will live if we get you to a doctor. He turned to the Boston couple who were staring at him with wide eyes. Can you drive a wagon? The man nodded shakily. I think so. Good, help me get these horses back in harness. We need to get everyone to Superior. Henry's eyes finally landed on Hannah, who was still standing in the same spot, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. Madam, are you hurt? Hannah shook her head, not trusting her voice. Now that the immediate danger had passed, the reality of what had almost happened crashed over her like a wave. She began to tremble, her breath coming in short gasps. Henry was at her side in an instant, his strong hands gently steadying her shoulders. Breathe slowly, he said, his voice softer now, gentler. You are safe. It is over. She looked up into his blue eyes and found herself believing him. There was something solid and dependable about this man, something that made her feel protected in a way she had not felt since her father died. You saved my life, she whispered. You could have been killed. Could have been, but was not, he said with a slight smile that transformed his serious face. I have been in worse scrapes. He released her shoulders, and she immediately felt the loss of that steadying presence. "What is your name?" "Hannah Morrison. I was traveling to my sister's ranch near Superior." "Henry Patterson. I work as a ranch hand and horsebreaker in these parts." He retrieved her fallen traveling bag and handed it to her. "Let's get you to town, Miss Morrison. You have had enough excitement for one day." Working together, Henry and the Boston gentleman, whose name was Charles Whitmore, managed to right the stagecoach enough to determine it was still functional, though damaged. They buried the driver with what dignity they could manage in the desert, said a few words over his grave, and then Henry helped everyone aboard. The wounded guard, a man named Pete, was made as comfortable as possible inside the coach with Hannah and Mrs. Whitmore tending to him, while Henry rode alongside on his horse, keeping watch in case the gang doubled back. Hannah found her eyes drawn to him repeatedly during the journey. She watched the easy way he sat his horse, the alert manner in which he scanned the horizon, the competence in every movement. She had known cowboys before, but Henry Patterson was different. There was a quiet intelligence in his eyes, a thoughtfulness in his demeanor that set him apart from the rougher men she had encountered. "That young man is quite something," Mrs. Whitmore whispered to Hannah, noticing her attention. "Not many would have stood up to 6 armed outlaws." "No," Hannah agreed softly. "Not many would have." Superior, Arizona was a small mining town nestled in the shadow of Apache Leap, its buildings a mixture of adobe and rough timber construction. As they rolled down the main street, people stopped to stare at the damaged stagecoach and its unusual escort. Henry directed them to the doctor's office first, where Pete was carried inside and immediately tended to. Then he led them to the sheriff's office to report the attack. Sheriff Tom Wagner was a weathered man in his 50s with a gray mustache and tired eyes. He listened to their account with growing concern, making notes in a leather-bound journal. When Henry described the leader's scarred face and the name Jack Dalton, the sheriff cursed under his breath. "The Dalton Gang has been operating in this territory for 6 months, he explained. "They have hit 4 stagecoaches, 2 banks, and a mining payroll. We have had posses out after them twice, but they know this desert better than most. They have a hideout somewhere in the mountains, but we have not been able to find it." He fixed Henry with an appraising look. "You are lucky to be alive, son. Jack Dalton is not known for his mercy." "Neither am I when it comes to men who threaten innocent people," Henry replied evenly. The sheriff's expression softened slightly. "I know who you are, Patterson. Heard you are one of the best horsemen in the territory and that you can shoot like nobody's business. Still, you made dangerous enemies today. The Dalton Gang holds grudges." "Let them hold whatever they want," Henry said. "They will not touch Miss Morrison or anyone else if I can prevent it." Hannah felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. She barely knew this man, yet he was pledging to protect her from outlaws who would surely want revenge. It was both terrifying and strangely thrilling. After giving their statements, the Whitmores departed for the hotel, still shaken by their experience. Hannah stood on the wooden sidewalk outside the sheriff's office, uncertain what to do next. Her sister's ranch was still 10 miles north of town, and she had no way to get there with the stagecoach damaged and no driver. Henry seemed to read her thoughts. "Where is your sister's ranch?" "About 10 miles north, near Pinnell Creek. It belongs to her husband, James Kendrick. They raise cattle and horses." Hannah bit her lip, considering her options. "I suppose I should find a room at the hotel and send word to them. James can come fetch me tomorrow." "That would be the safest course," Henry agreed. He hesitated, then added, "I work at the Prescott Ranch about 3 miles west of town. We supply horses to the cavalry and the mining companies. If you need anything while you are here, you can find me there." Hannah met his eyes, seeing genuine concern there. "Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for everything. I do not know how I can ever repay you." "No repayment necessary, Miss Morrison. I did what any decent man would do." He tipped his hat to her, preparing to mount his horse. "Mr. Patterson," she called out before he could leave. When he turned back, she found herself blushing slightly but pressed on. "Would you perhaps join me for dinner this evening, at the hotel dining room? It is the least I can do to thank you properly." A slow smile spread across Henry's face, and Hannah noticed for the first time how handsome he was when he smiled. "I would be honored, Miss Morrison. Shall we say 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock, she confirmed, her heart beating faster than it should for such a simple arrangement. Hannah checked into the hotel and sent a telegram to her sister explaining what had happened, and that she was safe in Superior. Then she went to her small but clean room and tried to process the events of the day. She had nearly been kidnapped by outlaws, had witnessed a man face down 6 armed criminals without flinching, and now she was having dinner with that same man. It seemed impossible that all of this had happened in the span of a few hours. She washed the dust of travel from her face and hands, then changed into her better dress, a deep blue cotton with white lace trim at the collar and cuffs. It was not fancy by city standards, but it was the nicest thing she owned. As she fixed her hair in the small mirror, she wondered why she was taking such care with her appearance. It was just a thank-you dinner, nothing more. But even as she thought it, she knew she was lying to herself. There had been something in the way Henry looked at her, in the gentle way he had steadied her after the attack, in his immediate agreement to dinner. And there was definitely something in the way her pulse quickened when she thought of seeing him again. At precisely 7 o'clock, Hannah descended to the hotel dining room and found Henry already there, waiting near the entrance. He had clearly gone home and cleaned up, wearing a fresh white shirt, dark vest, and clean trousers. His hair was still damp from washing, and he had shaved the stubble from his jaw. He looked up as she approached, and the expression that crossed his face made Hannah's breath catch. "Miss Morrison," he said, standing straighter, "you look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "You look quite presentable yourself, Mr. Patterson," he grinned. "Well, I figured I should try to look civilized even if I spend most of my days covered in dust and horse hair." The hotel dining room was modest but welcoming, with checkered tablecloths and oil lamps providing warm light. Henry held out a chair for Hannah, displaying manners that surprised her given his occupation. Once they were seated and had ordered their meals, beef stew for both of them and coffee, an awkward silence fell between them. "So," Henry began, then paused. "I realize I know almost nothing about you except that you are brave enough to travel through outlaw country and have a sister who married a rancher." Hannah laughed, some of her nervousness dissipating. "There is not much more to know, I fear. I am quite ordinary. I grew up in Tucson with my parents and my older sister, Catherine. My father was a teacher, and he made sure both his daughters were educated, which was unusual for girls, I know. My mother was a seamstress. They both died 3 years ago during an influenza outbreak." "I am sorry," Henry said, and the compassion in his voice was genuine. "That must have been terrible." "It was," Hannah admitted. "Catherine had already married and moved to her husband's ranch, so I was alone. I have been working as a teacher in Tucson since then, but Catherine has been begging me to come live with her and James. They have 2 small children, and she needs help with the ranch work. I finally decided to accept her offer." She took a sip of water. "That was supposed to be the start of my new life. Instead, I nearly ended up kidnapped by outlaws." "But you did not," Henry pointed out. You are here, safe, about to eat mediocre stew and make conversation with a ranch hand who is far better with horses than with words." Hannah smiled. "I think you are doing fine with words, Mr. Patterson, Henry," he corrected. "Please. After facing down outlaws together, I think we can dispense with the formalities. Only if you call me Hannah." "Hannah," he repeated, and she liked the way her name sounded in his voice. "That is a good name, strong and classic." Their food arrived, and as they ate, the conversation flowed more easily. Henry told her about his work at the Prescott Ranch, his love of horses, and his background. He had been born in Texas, the son of a rancher who lost everything when a drought killed their cattle. His father had died when Henry was 16, and his mother had remarried and moved to California. Henry had struck out on his own, working various ranch jobs throughout Texas and New Mexico before settling in Arizona 2 years ago. "The Prescott Ranch is the best place I have worked," he said. "The owner, Daniel Prescott, is a fair man who treats his workers with respect. I have learned more about horse breeding and training in the past 2 years than in my entire life before." "Do you plan to stay there?" Hannah asked, genuinely interested. Henry considered the question. "I would like to have my own ranch someday. Nothing huge, just enough land to raise quality horses and maybe some cattle. But that takes money, and I am still saving. In the meantime, I am learning everything I can." Hannah found herself admiring his ambition and his practical approach to achieving his dreams. There was no false bravado with Henry, no exaggerated claims or empty boasting. He was honest about where he was and where he wanted to be, and she appreciated that more than she could say. As they finished their meal and lingered over coffee, Hannah realized she had not enjoyed herself this much in years. Henry was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that made her laugh and an attentive manner that made her feel like he genuinely cared about what she had to say. When he told stories about mishaps with stubborn horses or encounters with difficult customers, he did so with self-deprecating humor that was utterly charming. "I should probably let you get some rest," Henry said eventually, though he sounded reluctant. "You have had a long and difficult day." "I have," Hannah agreed, "but this evening has been wonderful. Thank you for joining me, Henry. The pleasure was entirely mine." He stood and helped her with her chair. "Your brother-in-law will be coming to fetch you tomorrow, I assume." "I imagine so, if he received my telegram." They walked together through the hotel lobby toward the stairs that led to the guest rooms. At the base of the stairs, Henry paused, turning to face her. In the lamplight, his blue eyes seemed even more intense, and Hannah felt something shift in the air between them. "Hannah, I know we just met today under unusual circumstances, but I would like to see you again. Would that be acceptable?" Her heart soared. "I would like that very much. I could ride out to your sister's ranch in a few days, if that would be all right. I could bring a horse that needs exercising, make it look like ranch business." Hannah laughed softly. "You do not need an excuse, Henry. I am sure Catherine and James would welcome you, especially after what you did today. Then I will come calling properly, as a gentleman should." He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin, and raised it briefly to his lips. "Good night, Hannah Morrison." "Good night, Henry Patterson." Hannah floated up the stairs to her room, her hand still tingling from his kiss. She could hardly believe this day had started with terror and violence, and was ending with the flutter of new feelings in her chest. She barely knew Henry, yet something about him felt right in a way she had never experienced before. She fell asleep that night with a smile on her face, dreaming of blue eyes and a quiet voice saying that no woman belonged to any man. The next morning, James Kendrick arrived in town driving a sturdy wagon. He was a tall, weathered man in his 30s with sun-browned skin and worry lines around his eyes. When he saw Hannah safe and whole on the hotel porch, relief flooded his face. "Hannah, thank God," he said, pulling her into a brief, awkward hug. James was not naturally demonstrative, but his concern was evident. "Catherine has been beside herself since she got your telegram. She wanted to come herself, but the children are both down with colds and she could not leave them." "I am fine, James, truly." Hannah climbed up onto the wagon seat beside him. "Thanks to a very brave man named Henry Patterson." As they made the journey north to the ranch, Hannah told James everything that had happened. His expression grew increasingly grim as she described the attack and the gang's intentions, but when she reached the part about Henry facing down all 6 outlaws, James let out a low whistle. "That took some courage," he said with genuine admiration. "Henry Patterson, you said?" "I have heard that name. He works for Daniel Prescott, and people say he is the best horseman in the territory. They also say he is a straight shooter, literally and figuratively. Good man to have on your side." "He was more than good," Hannah said quietly. "He saved my life, James." "And he asked if he could come calling on me." James glanced at her, his expression shifting from concern to something that might have been approval. "And what did you say?" "I said yes." A small smile tugged at James's mouth. "Catherine will be thrilled. She has been trying to find suitable men for you since you arrived in Arizona." "Well, she can stop trying," Hannah said, then blushed at how that sounded. "I mean, I am not saying Henry and I are courting exactly. We only just met, but I would like to get to know him better." "Nothing wrong with that," James agreed. "A woman should take her time choosing a man, make sure he is worthy." The Kendrick Ranch was a sprawling property with a well-maintained house, barn, corrals, and outbuildings. Cattle grazed on the hillsides, and several horses stood in the paddocks, swishing their tails at flies. It was clear that James ran a prosperous operation, though Hannah knew from Catherine's letters that it required constant hard work. Catherine came running from the house as soon as the wagon pulled up, her apron flying and her dark hair escaping its bun. She was 4 years older than Hannah, and motherhood had softened her figure, but her eyes were the same warm brown Hannah remembered from childhood. "Hannah." Catherine threw her arms around her sister, hugging her so tightly that Hannah could barely breathe. "I was so frightened when I got your telegram. Thank heaven you are safe." "I am fine, Kath. I promise." Hannah returned the embrace, feeling emotion well up in her throat. It had been 3 years since she had seen her sister in person, and she had not realized how much she missed her until this moment. Catherine pulled back, examining Hannah from head to toe as if checking for injuries. "James told me about the Outlaw attack and about this Mr. Patterson who saved you. Is it true he faced down 6 armed men alone?" "It is true. He was incredibly brave." Hannah felt her cheeks warm at the memory. Catherine's eyes narrowed in the way that only an older sister's could. "And there is more to this story, I can tell. Come inside. The children are napping and you can tell me everything over tea." The Kendrick house was comfortable and homey, with furniture that showed wear but also care. Catherine led Hannah to the kitchen, where she poured tea and set out fresh bread and butter. Then she sat down across from Hannah and fixed her with an expectant look. "Tell me about this Henry Patterson." Hannah found herself telling Catherine everything, not just about the attack, but about the dinner afterward, the easy conversation, the way Henry made her feel safe and interesting and valued. Catherine listened without interrupting, a knowing smile growing on her face. "You like him," Catherine said when Hannah finished. "Truly like him." "I barely know him," Hannah protested weakly. "Sometimes you just know," Catherine replied. "That is how it was with James. I met him at a church social in Tucson, and within 10 minutes of conversation, I knew he was the man I wanted to marry." Sometimes the heart recognizes what the mind has not yet accepted. Hannah sipped her tea, considering her sister's words. Could it really be that simple? Could you meet someone and just know they were important, that they could change your life? Over the next few days, Hannah settled into life at the ranch. She helped Catherine with the children, 5-year-old Michael and 3-year-old Sarah, both of whom recovered quickly from their colds. She assisted with cooking and cleaning, learned to feed the chickens and collect eggs, and even tried her hand at milking the cow, with mixed results that made Catherine laugh. But through it all, her thoughts kept returning to Henry. She found herself wondering what he was doing, if he was thinking about her, when he would come to visit. Catherine noticed her distraction and teased her gently about it, but there was warmth in her teasing, happiness that Hannah might have found someone special. On the 4th day after Hannah's arrival, a rider appeared on the eastern road. Hannah was hanging laundry on the line when she spotted him, and her heart leaped as she recognized both horse and rider. Henry sat tall in the saddle, and beside him on a lead rope was one of the most beautiful horses Hannah had ever seen, a sleek bay mare with a white blaze on her forehead. "Catherine," Hannah called, trying to keep the excitement from her voice and failing completely. "Henry is here." Catherine appeared from the house, wiping her hands on her apron, a wide smile on her face. "Well, go greet him properly. Do not leave the poor man standing in the yard." Hannah walked toward Henry as he dismounted, suddenly feeling shy. He removed his hat, and the sight of his sun-bronzed face and bright blue eyes made her breath catch just as it had at their first meeting. "Hello, Hannah," he said, his voice warm. "I hope I am not intruding." "Not at all. We have been expecting you." She gestured toward the mare. "What a beautiful horse. This is Rosie. Mr. Prescott asked me to deliver her to a ranch about 5 miles from here. I thought I might stop here first, if that is acceptable." More than acceptable. Catherine had approached, and Hannah made introductions. "Catherine, this is Henry Patterson." "Henry, my sister Catherine Kendrick. Mrs. Kendrick." Henry shook Catherine's hand respectfully. "Thank you for allowing me to visit." "Thank you for saving my sister's life," Catherine replied firmly. "You are welcome here any time, Mr. Patterson. Will you stay for lunch?" "I would be honored." Over lunch, James joined them, and Hannah watched as Henry conversed easily with her brother-in-law about horses, cattle, and the challenges of ranching in Arizona. The two men clearly respected each other, and Hannah could see James warming to Henry's straightforward manner and obvious knowledge. After the meal, Henry asked if Hannah would like to take a walk, and Catherine practically shoved them out the door, earning an embarrassed protest from Hannah. They walked toward the creek that ran along the edge of the property, the bay mare, Rosie, trailing behind on her lead rope. "Your sister seems nice," Henry said with a hint of amusement. "Very enthusiastic about getting us alone together." Hannah laughed. "She means well. She has been trying to get me settled and happy, and I think she sees you as the answer to her prayers." "No pressure there," Henry joked, but his expression grew more serious. "I have been thinking about you constantly since that night at the hotel. I know it has only been a few days, but I cannot get you out of my mind, Hannah." Her heart raced. "I have been thinking about you too, more than I probably should, given that we barely know each other." They reached the creek, where cottonwood trees provided shade and the water burbled over smooth stones. Henry tied Rosie to a tree branch, then turned to face Hannah fully. "Then maybe we should fix that," he said. "Maybe we should take the time to know each other properly. I am not a man who plays games or toys with people's feelings, Hannah. When I am interested in someone, I am all in, and I am very interested in you." Hannah felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet, but in a good way, like she was suddenly seeing a new path forward that she had not known existed. "I am interested in you too, Henry. I have never felt this way before, this immediate connection with someone. It is both exciting and terrifying. I know what you mean. He reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. But maybe we could be excited and terrified together. Would you let me court you properly, Hannah Morrison? Would you give me the chance to show you who I am and see if this feeling between us is real and lasting? She looked up into his blue eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and hope. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I would like that very much. Henry's face broke into a brilliant smile, and he squeezed her hand gently. You have made me very happy. They stood there by the creek, hands joined, the Arizona sun warm on their backs and the sound of water providing a peaceful backdrop. Hannah felt a sense of rightness settle over her, a feeling that despite the unusual circumstances of their meeting, this was exactly where she was supposed to be. Over the following weeks, Henry became a regular visitor to the Kendrick Ranch. He came at least twice a week, sometimes with the excuse of delivering a horse or checking on one he had sold to James, but increasingly without any excuse at all. He and Hannah took long walks, talked for hours, and discovered how much they had in common despite their different backgrounds. They both loved reading, though opportunities for books were rare in this part of Arizona. They both valued honesty and hard work. They both wanted families someday, children to raise and love. They both appreciated the beauty of the desert landscape, the way the sunset painted the mountains in shades of purple and gold, the resilience of the plants and animals that thrived in this harsh environment. Hannah also saw Henry interact with Michael and Sarah, and her heart melted at how gentle and patient he was with the children. He taught Michael how to whistle, helped Sarah collect pretty rocks, and listened to their endless questions with genuine interest. Catherine noticed too, and she told Hannah one evening that she had never seen a man so natural with children, who was not already a father. But their growing happiness was shadowed by an undercurrent of worry. The Dalton Gang had not been seen since the stagecoach attack, but rumors circulated that they were still operating in the territory. Sheriff Wagner sent word that they had hit a bank in Globe, a town about 30 miles north, and had killed a clerk in the process. The sheriff warned that Jack Dalton had sworn revenge on the cowboy who had interfered with his plans, and everyone knew he meant Henry. I am not worried about myself, Henry told Hannah one afternoon as they sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching storm clouds gather over the mountains. But I worry about you. What if they come here looking for me? What if they try to hurt you to get back at me? Hannah took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. You cannot live your life in fear of what bad men might do, Henry. You did the right thing that day on the road. You saved my life and the lives of others. I will not have you second-guessing that decision. I do not second-guess it, he said quietly. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I just wish there were no consequences, no lingering threat. We will be careful, Hannah assured him. And we will not let them steal our happiness. But careful could only go so far. 2 months after the stagecoach attack, on a crisp October evening, trouble arrived at the Kendrick Ranch. Hannah was in the barn helping James with the evening feeding when they heard horses approaching fast and hard. James immediately tensed, his hand moving to the rifle he kept nearby. Get in the house, he told Hannah urgently. Now. But before she could move, 6 riders burst into the yard surrounding the barn. Hannah's blood turned to ice as she recognized Jack Dalton in the lead, his right hand still bandaged from where Henry had shot him. Well, well, Jack said, his voice dripping with malice. Look what we found. The little prize that got away and her protector's friends. James stepped in front of Hannah, raising his rifle. You are trespassing. Leave now or I will shoot. You will shoot 6 of us before we shoot you, one of the gang members laughed. I do not think so, rancher. Catherine appeared in the doorway of the house, and Hannah's heart sank as she saw Michael and Sarah peeking out from behind their mother's skirts. Jack Dalton noticed them too, and his eyes lit up with cruel pleasure. Even better, a whole family to play with. He fixed his gaze on Hannah. Where is your cowboy hero now, girl? Where is Henry Patterson when you need him? Right here. Henry's voice rang out from behind the barn, and Hannah's head whipped around to see him standing there with his revolver drawn, his expression harder than she had ever seen it. He must have arrived through the back way, seen the gang, and circled around. Let them go, Dalton. This is between you and me. Jack Dalton's face twisted with rage and satisfaction. There you are. I have been looking for you for 2 months, Patterson. You have been a difficult man to catch alone. I am alone now, Henry lied smoothly. These people have nothing to do with our quarrel. Let them go inside their house and you can deal with me. Oh, I intend to deal with you, Jack promised. But first, I think I will take what I came for originally. The woman belongs to us. We claimed her first. I do not belong to anyone, Hannah said, finding her voice despite her fear. She stepped out from behind James, ignoring his hissed protest. And I certainly do not belong to you. I am a free person who makes my own choices, and I choose to tell you to leave this ranch and never come back. The gang members laughed, but Jack Dalton's eyes narrowed. You have spirit, I like that. It will be fun to break you. You will have to get through me first, Henry said, his voice deadly calm. And I promise you that will not be easy. 6 against 1, Jack reminded him. Even a fast gun cannot beat those odds. Maybe not, Henry agreed. But I can take at least 3 of you before I go down, and I am betting you will be first, Jack. Is revenge worth dying for? For a long moment, nobody moved. The desert wind whistled through the barn, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Hannah could see the calculation in Jack Dalton's eyes, the war between his desire for revenge and his instinct for self-preservation. Then another voice called out from the direction of the road. How about 7 against 6? Those seem like better odds. Sheriff Wagner rode into the yard, his rifle across his saddle, and behind him came 3 deputized men also armed. Relief flooded through Hannah so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. Sheriff, Jack Dalton said, his voice losing some of its confidence. This is a private matter. Trespassing, threatening innocent people, and attempted kidnapping are not private matters, Sheriff Wagner replied. They are crimes, and I am placing you and your men under arrest for those crimes and for the bank robbery in Globe. You cannot prove anything. The bank clerk you shot survived, and he identified you before he died, the sheriff said flatly. We have witnesses to your other crimes. It is over, Dalton. Surrender, or we will shoot you where you sit. The gang members looked at each other nervously. They were outlaws and criminals, but they were not suicidal. Slowly, one by one, they raised their hands. Jack Dalton was the last to comply, his face purple with rage. You set a trap, he accused, glaring at Henry. I sent word to the sheriff that you might be targeting the Kendricks, Henry admitted. I am not fool enough to face 6 armed men without backup when innocent lives are at stake. The deputies moved in and disarmed the gang, binding their hands. As they were led away, Jack Dalton fixed Henry with a venomous stare. This is not over, Patterson. Yes, it is, Sheriff Wagner said firmly. You are going to hang for murder, Dalton. Your threatening days are done. After the gang was taken away, the sheriff stayed long enough to take statements and assure everyone that with the gang captured, the threat was truly over. He thanked Henry for his help in setting the trap and told him the territory owed him a debt of gratitude. When the sheriff finally left, darkness had fallen over the ranch. Catherine herded the children inside, and James went to check on the livestock to make sure they had not been disturbed by the commotion. Henry and Hannah were left standing in the yard, both shaking with residual fear and adrenaline. "Are you all right?" Henry asked, pulling Hannah into his arms. She nodded against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent of leather and soap and something uniquely him. "I am now." "That was terrifying, Henry. I thought they were going to hurt you." "I was more afraid they would hurt you," he admitted. "When I rode up and saw them surrounding the barn, my heart nearly stopped. I could not lose you, Hannah, not when I have only just found you." She pulled back to look up at him, seeing the raw emotion in his eyes. "You will not lose me. I am not going anywhere." "Good," he said roughly. "Because I love you, Hannah Morrison. I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other for 2 months, but I love you. I have loved you since the moment I saw you standing in that desert, brave and strong even though you were terrified. I love your kindness, your intelligence, your laugh, everything about you. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you if you will have me." Tears spilled down Hannah's cheeks, but they were happy tears. "I love you too, Henry Patterson, so much it scares me sometimes. And yes, I will have you. I will absolutely have you." He kissed her then, a deep, passionate kiss that sealed their promises and expressed everything words could not. Hannah wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with all the love and relief and joy she felt, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Marry me," Henry said, his forehead resting against hers. "Please, Hannah, be my wife." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." From the porch, Catherine's delighted squeal could be heard, followed by James's amused chuckle. Henry and Hannah laughed, realizing their moment had not been as private as they thought, but neither cared. They were too happy, too relieved, too completely in love to worry about anything else. They were married 6 weeks later, in December of 1882, at the small church in Superior. Catherine cried happy tears throughout the ceremony, and little Sarah threw flower petals with such enthusiasm that they ended up in everyone's hair. James served as Henry's best man, and several men from the Prescott Ranch attended, along with Sheriff Wagner and half the town, all of whom had heard the story of the cowboy who stood up to the Dalton Gang. Hannah wore a cream-colored dress that Catherine had helped her sew, with lace at the collar and cuffs that matched the lace in her bridal bouquet. Henry wore his best suit, looking handsome and slightly nervous as he waited at the altar. But when Hannah walked down the aisle on James's arm, his face lit up with such love and joy that she felt her own heart might burst. The Reverend performed a simple but moving ceremony, and when he pronounced them husband and wife, Henry kissed Hannah with such tenderness that several ladies in the congregation sighed audibly. Afterward, there was a reception at the hotel, with food and dancing and toasts to the happy couple. To Henry and Hannah, Sheriff Wagner raised his glass. May their courage in facing outlaws be matched only by their courage in facing life together. Everyone laughed and cheered, and Hannah looked at her new husband with shining eyes. She had come to Arizona expecting to start a new life as a teacher at her sister's ranch. Instead, she had found adventure, danger, and the greatest love she could have imagined. Henry and Hannah spent their wedding night at the hotel in Superior, then traveled to Phoenix for a brief honeymoon. When they returned, they moved into a small house on the Prescott Ranch that Daniel Prescott had offered them rent-free in exchange for Henry continuing to work with the horses. It was not much, just 4 rooms and a porch, but it was theirs, and Hannah threw herself into making it a home. She painted curtains for the windows, planted a small vegetable garden, and arranged the furniture they bought from a widow who was moving back east. Henry built her bookshelves for the small collection of books they were accumulating, and a rocking chair for the porch where they could sit together in the evenings and watch the sunset. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Henry worked with the horses during the day, breaking and training them with patience and skill that earned him increasing respect throughout the territory. Hannah took in sewing work and gave reading lessons to the children of ranch hands, putting her teaching skills to use. They visited Catherine and James regularly, and the two couples became even closer, their children playing together and their lives intertwined. In the spring of 1883, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. She told Henry one evening as they sat on their porch, and the look of awe and joy on his face was something she would treasure forever. "A baby," he breathed, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Hannah asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Henry said, pulling her into his arms. "You have given me everything I ever wanted, Hannah. A home, a family, a purpose. I love you more than I can say." Their son was born in November of 1883, a healthy baby boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him William, after Hannah's father, and from the moment Henry held his son for the first time, Hannah knew she had married the right man. Henry was a devoted father, gentle and patient, changing diapers without complaint and walking the floor with William during sleepless nights. In 1885, their daughter was born, a tiny, perfect girl they named Grace. William, now a rambunctious toddler, was fascinated by his baby sister and wanted to help with everything. The little house sometimes felt crowded with two active children, but it was filled with love and laughter. As the years passed, Henry's reputation as a horseman grew. He began to breed his own horses on land that Daniel Prescott allowed him to use, and his stock became sought after by ranchers and cavalry officers throughout the territory. By 1887, he had saved enough money to buy his own land, a beautiful piece of property with good water and grass, about 2 miles from the Kendrick Ranch. Henry and Hannah built their dream home there, a larger house with enough room for their growing family and the children they hoped to have in the future. They moved in during the summer of 1888, and Hannah stood on the porch of their new home, looking out at the land that was truly theirs, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. "What are you thinking?" Henry asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I am thinking about that day on the road to Superior," Hannah said softly. "How terrified I was, and how you appeared like something out of a story to save me. I am thinking about how you said no woman belongs to any man, and how that one statement changed my life." Henry rested his chin on top of her head. "I meant every word. You do not belong to me, Hannah. You are my partner, my equal, the other half of my heart. We belong with each other, not to each other. There is a difference." "I know," she said, turning in his arms to face him. "And that is why I love you so much. That is why our marriage works. You have never tried to own me or control me. You have always respected my thoughts, my feelings, my independence. Because that is what love is," Henry said simply. "It is not possession, it is partnership." In 1889, they welcomed their third child, another son they named Thomas. William was now 5 and starting to help his father with the horses, showing the same natural aptitude that Henry had. Grace was 4, bright and curious, constantly asking questions about everything she saw. Thomas was a quiet baby who rarely cried and seemed content to watch his older siblings with solemn eyes. Catherine and James's children were also growing, and the two families spent many Sunday afternoons together, the children running wild while the adults talked and laughed. Sometimes they had picnics by Pinnell Creek. Sometimes they just sat on each other's porches and enjoyed the simple pleasure of family. The Patterson Horse Ranch prospered. Henry's reputation for honest dealing and quality stock brought customers from as far away as New Mexico and California. He hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, and Hannah managed the business side of things, keeping the books and handling correspondence with her teacher's precise handwriting. In 1892, their 4th child arrived, another daughter they named Emma. Hannah was now 33, Henry was 32, and they agreed that their family was complete. 4 healthy, happy children, a successful ranch, and a love that had only deepened with time. These were blessings beyond anything either of them had dared to hope for. Life was not without challenges, of course. There were droughts that tested their water supply, illnesses that frightened them, and the constant hard work that ranching demanded. But they faced everything together, supporting each other through difficult times and celebrating the good times with grateful hearts. In 1894, when William turned 11, Henry began teaching him to break horses properly. Hannah watched from the corral fence as father and son worked together, Henry's patient voice instructing, William's eager face concentrating, and she felt her heart swell with love for both of them. "He is just like his father," Catherine observed, standing beside Hannah. She had ridden over with her daughters to visit. "Same patience, same natural ability with animals." "He is," Hannah agreed. "But he has my love of reading too. He can sit for hours with a book, completely absorbed." "The best of both of you," Catherine said warmly. "All your children are." Grace, now 9, was indeed showing her mother's love of learning. She helped Hannah teach reading to the younger ranch children, displaying patience and creativity beyond her years. Thomas, at 5, was quieter than his siblings but thoughtful and observant, noticing things others missed. And little Emma, at 2, was a force of nature, fearless and determined, keeping everyone on their toes. In 1896, Arizona was moving toward statehood, and the wild frontier that Henry and Hannah had known was gradually becoming more civilized. Superior had grown from a rough mining town into a proper community with a school, a church, a library, and several shops. The railroad had reached the territory, bringing easier transportation and more opportunities for trade. Henry and Hannah attended town meetings and social functions, respected members of the community. Henry served on the town council for a time, helping to make decisions about roads and water rights. Hannah helped establish the library and taught Sunday school at the church. They were woven into the fabric of their community, valued for their integrity and hard work. On their 15th wedding anniversary in December of 1897, Henry took Hannah to the same hotel dining room where they had shared their first meal together. It looked much the same, though the tablecloths were newer and the menu more extensive. 15 years, Henry mused, holding Hannah's hand across the table. "It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all." "I know what you mean," Hannah said, smiling. "So much has changed, but the important things have stayed the same. I still love you just as much as I did that first night, maybe more." "Definitely more," Henry corrected gently. "Because now our love is built on years of shared experiences, of facing challenges together, of building a life and a family. That first night we had attraction and connection. Now we have everything." Hannah blinked back tears. Even after 15 years, Henry could still make her cry with his words, with the depth of feeling he expressed so simply and sincerely. They toasted to their past and their future, to their children and their ranch, to the life they had built in this harsh but beautiful desert land. They remembered that day on the road when everything changed, when an outlaw gang thought they could claim a woman like property, and a cowboy proved them wrong with both his gun and his words. As they left the hotel that evening, walking hand in hand down the wooden sidewalk of Superior, Hannah paused to look up at the stars blazing in the clear Arizona sky. She thought about all the paths her life might have taken, all the different futures that could have been hers. But this was the one she had chosen, or perhaps the one that had chosen her, and she would not change a single thing. "What are you thinking?" Henry asked, following her gaze upward. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest woman in the world," Hannah said. "And I am thinking that everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. The attack, your intervention, our meeting, it all led us here." "I do not believe in fate," Henry said slowly, "but I believe in choices. I chose to stand up to those outlaws. You chose to have dinner with me. We chose each other, again and again, every day since then. That is what I am most proud of, not fate, but the conscious decisions we made to build this life together." "Then I choose you again," Hannah said softly. "Today and every day for the rest of our lives." "And I choose you," Henry replied, kissing her tenderly under the Arizona stars. The years continued to pass, marked by the milestones of their children's lives. William took over more of the horse training as he grew into a capable young man, displaying his father's skill and his mother's business sense. By the time he was 20, in 1903, he was essentially running the ranch alongside Henry, and they had expanded their operation to include cattle as well as horses. Grace married a schoolteacher from Phoenix in 1904, a good man named Robert Fielding who respected her intelligence and encouraged her love of learning. Hannah cried at the wedding, but they were happy tears, seeing her daughter so clearly cherished and valued. Thomas showed an unexpected talent for mechanics and engineering, fascinated by the new automobiles that were beginning to appear in Arizona. Henry supported his son's interests, even though it meant Thomas might not follow in his ranching footsteps, because he believed every person should find their own path. Emma, their youngest, inherited her father's way with horses and her mother's fierce independence. She could outride most of the ranch hands by the time she was 14, and she had no patience for people who tried to tell her what girls could or could not do. "She reminds me of you," Henry told Hannah one evening as they watched Emma racing across a field on her favorite horse. "Strong, brave, determined to make her own choices." "She reminds me of us," Hannah corrected. "She has your courage and my stubbornness. Heaven help any man who tries to tell her she belongs to him." Henry laughed. "I pity the fool who tries. She will set him straight faster than I set straight Jack Dalton." They still spoke of that day sometimes, though the memories had softened with time. Jack Dalton and his gang had been hanged for murder in 1883, ending their reign of terror permanently. The frontier had become safer, more settled, though it never lost its essential character of wildness and possibility. In 1905, Henry and Hannah celebrated their 23rd anniversary. They were in their mid-40s now, their hair showing threads of silver, their faces marked by years of sun and wind and laughter. Their children were grown or nearly so, their ranch was prosperous, and their love had weathered every storm. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if I had not been on that road that day?" Henry asked one night as they sat on their porch, rocking in companionable silence. "Sometimes," Hannah admitted, "but not in the way you might think. I do not wonder what if with regret. I wonder what if with gratitude, because the alternative is unthinkable. You saved my life that day, Henry, not just from the outlaws, but from a life without love, without partnership, without you." "You saved mine too," Henry said quietly. "Before I met you, I was just drifting, working, saving money, but not really living. You gave me purpose and meaning. You made me want to build something lasting." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had made their own. In the distance, They could see their children going about the evening chores, William heading to the barn, Emma riding in from the far pasture. It was a scene of peace and prosperity, of family and home. "No woman belongs to any man," Hannah said softly, repeating the words that had changed her life. "But a woman can choose to share her life with a man, to build something together that is greater than either could create alone." "That is what we have done," Henry agreed. "We have created a life, a family, a legacy. And it all started because I refused to let bad men define what was right and wrong. It started because you were brave enough to stand up for what you believed in," Hannah corrected. "And because you saw me as a person, not as property. That made all the difference." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Hannah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them from that terrified moment on a desert road to this peaceful evening on their own porch. She thought about all the challenges they had overcome, all the joys they had shared, all the ways they had grown together. Their children would have children of their own someday, carrying forward the values Henry and Hannah had taught them: independence, integrity, respect, and love. The Patterson name would endure in this land, associated with quality horses and honest dealing, and the story of a cowboy who stood up to 6 outlaws because he believed no woman should be forced against her will. In 1912, Arizona finally achieved statehood, and the frontier era officially ended. Henry and Hannah, now in their early 50s, attended the celebration in Phoenix, watching as the new state flag was raised. The world was changing rapidly, with automobiles becoming common, telephones connecting distant places, and rumors of unrest in Europe that might lead to war. But on the Patterson ranch, some things remained constant. Horses still needed breaking and training. Cattle still needed tending. The land still demanded hard work and respect. And Henry and Hannah still loved each other with the same depth and devotion they had felt from the beginning. William married a rancher's daughter from Prescott in 1913, bringing another generation to the Patterson line. Grace and Robert had 2 children by then, a boy and a girl who visited their grandparents often. Thomas had moved to Phoenix to work with a company that sold and repaired automobiles. But he came home every few months, always excited to share news of the latest mechanical innovations. Emma, at 24, was in no hurry to marry, much to the frustration of several young men in the territory. She was too busy helping run the ranch and training the exceptional horses that were the Patterson trademark. Henry and Hannah did not pressure her, remembering their own unconventional beginning and trusting that she would find her own path in her own time. In 1915, on a warm spring evening, Henry and Hannah sat on their porch as they had thousands of times before. They were both 55 now, their bodies bearing the marks of a lifetime of hard work, but their spirits were undiminished. "I have been thinking," Henry said suddenly, "about writing down our story. Not for publication or anything like that, but for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so they know how we met, what we believed in, how we built this life." Hannah considered this. "I think that is a wonderful idea. We have a good story to tell, do we not?" "The best story," Henry agreed. "A story about standing up for what is right, about choosing love over fear, about building something lasting together." "About you saving my life," Hannah added softly. "About us saving each other," Henry corrected, taking her hand. "That is the real story, Hannah. Not that I rescued you, but that we found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and chose to build a life together. That is what I want our grandchildren to know. That love is not about possession or control. It is about partnership and respect and choosing each other every single day." Hannah leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the same sense of rightness she had felt at their first meeting. "Then we will write it together," she said. our story, in our own words, so that future generations will know that once upon a time in the Arizona territory, an outlaw gang tried to claim a woman as property, and a cowboy said no woman belongs to any man. And from that moment of courage and conviction, a great love was born. And a family, Henry added, and a ranch and a legacy. All of that, Hannah agreed, all from one decision to do what was right, regardless of the risk. They sat together as the stars came out one by one, these two people who had found each other in the most unlikely way and had built something beautiful and lasting. Their story would be told and retold in the family, becoming legend, embellished with each telling but always containing the essential truth. That love is not about ownership but about choice, not about domination but about partnership, not about possession but about respect. In the years that followed, Henry and Hannah did write their story, working together in the evenings to record their memories. They wrote about the stagecoach attack, about Henry facing down 6 outlaws, about their courtship and marriage, about building their ranch and raising their children. They wrote honestly about the challenges they had faced and the joys they had shared. By 1920, they were grandparents multiple times over, with William's 3 children, Grace's 4, and Thomas's 2, filling their home with noise and laughter whenever they visited. Emma had finally married in 1918, choosing a quiet horse trainer from California who shared her values and her love of animals. They worked the ranch together, a true partnership that reminded Henry and Hannah of themselves. As they entered their 60s, Henry and Hannah began to slow down, letting their children and grandchildren take over more of the ranch work. But they never truly retired, never stopped being involved in the operation they had built from nothing. The land was in their blood, as much a part of them as their own heartbeats. In 1925, on their 43rd wedding anniversary, their entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled every room of the house and spilled out onto the porches. There was music and laughter, food and dancing, and an overwhelming sense of love and connection. Henry stood up to make a toast, his hair now completely silver but his blue eyes still bright and clear. 43 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I have ever known, he began. And every day since then has been a gift. We have built this ranch together, raised 4 wonderful children, and now we are blessed with 12 grandchildren. But more than that, we have built a partnership based on respect and equality, on the belief that no person belongs to another, but that 2 people can choose to belong with each other. He looked at Hannah, and the love in his eyes made her throat tighten with emotion. You have been my partner, my equal, my greatest adventure. You have made me a better man than I ever could have been alone, and I want all of you, he gestured to their assembled family, to remember this. The foundation of any good relationship, any good family, is respect. We must respect each other's autonomy, each other's dreams, each other's right to make choices. That is what your grandmother and I have tried to model, and that is what I hope you will carry forward. Everyone raised their glasses, voices blending in agreement. Hannah wiped away tears, overwhelmed by gratitude for this life, this man, this family they had created together. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, the guests in the house and the nearby cabins, Henry and Hannah walked out to the corral where it all began, where he had first taught William to work with horses, where so many memories had been made. Did you ever imagine it would be like this? Hannah asked, leaning against the fence rail. All those years ago, did you imagine this? Henry wrapped his arm around her shoulders. I imagined loving you. I imagined building a life together. But this, he gestured to the house glowing with lamplight, full of their descendants, this exceeds anything I could have imagined. We have created something that will outlast us, Hannah, something good and true. Because you chose to stand up for what was right, Hannah said. Because you believed no woman belongs to any man. Because we chose each other, Henry corrected gently. Never forget that part, Hannah. The choice was mutual. I may have saved you from those outlaws, but you saved me from a life without love, without purpose, without meaning. They stood there in the cool desert night, surrounded by the evidence of their successful life. The well-maintained buildings, the healthy horses in the corrals, the house full of family. The moon cast silver light over everything, and somewhere a coyote howled, a sound that had been part of their lives for more than 4 decades. If I had it to do over again, Hannah said softly, I would not change a single thing. Even the frightening parts, even the dangerous moments, because they led us here. Neither would I, Henry agreed. Every challenge made us stronger. Every difficulty we overcame together deepened our bond. We have had a good life, Hannah Morrison Patterson, a very good life. They returned to the house hand in hand, these two people who had met in violence and fear, but had built their life on love and respect. As they climbed into bed that night, surrounded by the sounds of their sleeping family, Hannah felt a deep sense of peace and completion. The years continued their march as they always do. Henry and Hannah entered their 70s, their bodies slower but their minds still sharp, their love still strong. They spent their days in comfortable companionship, still sitting on their porch in the evenings, still holding hands, still finding new things to talk about after nearly 50 years of marriage. In 1932, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with another huge family gathering. By then, they had 18 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren, a growing legacy that bore witness to the life they had built. William had taken over full operation of the ranch and was running it successfully with his sons. Grace was a respected teacher in Phoenix, following in her mother's footsteps. Thomas owned a successful automobile dealership. Emma and her husband ran a smaller ranch specializing in breeding horses for show and competition. At the anniversary celebration, Henry and Hannah's grandchildren asked them to tell the story of how they met. It was a familiar request. They had told it many times over the years. But this time, Henry handed over the written account they had labored over. "Read it yourselves," he said. "Your grandmother and I wrote it all down, everything we could remember. The good and the bad, the frightening and the joyful. It is our gift to you, the story of how we chose each other and built this family." The document was passed around reverently, grandchildren and great-grandchildren reading about ancestors they had never fully understood before. They read about the outlaw attack, about Henry's courage, about Hannah's strength. They read about the courtship and the wedding, about building the ranch and raising children, about facing challenges and celebrating triumphs. But most importantly, they read about love, true partnership, built on a foundation of mutual respect and equality. They read Henry's words, "No woman belongs to any man," and they understood that this was not just a statement made in a moment of crisis, but a philosophy that had guided their grandparents' entire marriage. "You were ahead of your time, Grandpa," Emma's daughter, 17-year-old Ruth, said with admiration. "Most men in 1882 did not think like that." Henry shook his head. "Good men have always thought like that, Ruth. It is not about being ahead of the times. It is about treating people with the basic respect they deserve as human beings. Your grandmother was not my property to claim or control. She was a person who chose to share her life with me, and that choice had to be freely given or it meant nothing." Ruth nodded thoughtfully, clearly taking his words to heart. Hannah watched the exchange with satisfaction, knowing that their values were being passed down to yet another generation. As the celebration wound down and family members began to depart, Henry and Hannah found themselves alone on their porch once more, watching the sun set over the land they had made their own. 50 years, Hannah mused. It seems impossible that so much time has passed. The best 50 years of my life, Henry said firmly. I would not trade a single day of it, even the difficult ones. Not even that day when I accidentally let all the chickens out and we spent hours chasing them. Hannah teased. Henry laughed, the sound still rich and warm despite his age. Not even that day. It is all part of our story, Hannah. The funny moments, the frustrating ones, the joyful and the sad, it is all woven together to create the tapestry of our life. They sat in comfortable silence, these two people who had weathered every storm together and emerged stronger. The desert wind blew gently, carrying the scent of sage and mesquite, familiar and beloved. You know what I am most proud of? Hannah said suddenly. Not the ranch, not even our children and grandchildren, though I am proud of them too. I am most proud that we kept our promise to each other. You never tried to own me, and I never tried to change you. We stayed true to those principles we established at the beginning. Because those principles matter, Henry replied. Without respect and equality, love becomes something else, something lesser. We understood that from the start, and we never forgot it. No, we never forgot, Hannah agreed. As darkness fell and the stars emerged, Henry and Hannah went inside, ready for whatever time they had left together. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and created a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. In 1935, Henry passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 75, with Hannah holding his hand. He had lived to see his family flourish, his ranch prosper, and his values passed down through generations. Hannah grieved deeply for the loss of her partner, her love, her other half, but she also celebrated the incredible life they had shared. She lived another 5 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, telling stories of the man who had saved her life and stolen her heart. She spoke often of his courage, his integrity, his revolutionary belief that women were equals deserving of respect and autonomy. When Hannah died in 1940 at the age of 80, she was buried beside Henry on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together. Her gravestone bore a simple inscription: Hannah Morrison Patterson, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She belonged to no one and with everyone. The ranch continued through the generations, each carrying forward the values that Henry and Hannah had established. The story of their meeting became family legend, told and retold, embellished and celebrated. But at its core, it always remained the same. A story of courage, of standing up for what is right, of love built on respect and equality. And in quiet moments, when descendants walked the land that Henry and Hannah had made their own, they could almost hear that long-ago voice echoing across the desert. No woman belongs to any man. Words spoken in defiance of evil, words that became the foundation of a family, words that changed one woman's life and created a legacy of love that would endure for generations. The Patterson Ranch remained in the family for over 100 years, a living testament to what two people could build when they chose each other freely and completely, when they respected each other's autonomy, and when they faced the world as equal partners. And always, the story was remembered and honored, the story of how an outlaw gang said a woman belonged to them, and a cowboy said no woman belongs to any man. And from that moment of moral clarity and courageous action, a great love was born.